Here's the key quote. It's not a question of if this will happen, but when this will happen and how many people in this country will have severe illnesses. It's what we're already seeing in China and in South Korea, where people waited in long lines to purchase face masks, with a number of cases there now rising to nearly 1,000 people. The U.S. State Department has raised its travel advisory, saying that U.S. nationals should avoid all non-essential travel to South Korea. In China, check out this stunning video, which appears to show a Chinese SWAT team practicing a takedown of an uncooperative coronavirus victim during a drill. And in Italy, some shelves in supermarkets are nearly empty as the northern part of that country deals with what is so far the largest outbreak in Europe. The disease has claimed the lives of 7, with at least 229 infected there. The global death toll from the disease has now surpassed 2,600, with more than 77,000 confirmed cases.
Deeply concerning, and community spread in other countries will make successful containment at our borders hard. The immediate risk to the general American public remains low. But as we have warned, that has the potential to change quickly. There is now community transmission in a number of countries, including outside of Asia. That's deeply concerning, and community spread in other countries will make successful containment at our borders harder and harder. That's why we've already been working closely with state, local, and private sector partners to prepare for mitigating the virus's potential spread in the United States, because we will likely see more cases here, as we have said throughout this episode.
I think the big concern here from the investment community is that you can be contagious while not exhibiting any symptoms. And so it's very difficult to track exactly what's going on and how much the virus has in fact spread. In and of itself, it kind of looks like the flu. I'm not trying to take it too lightly, but it is kind of flu-like. The real impact, though, of not knowing where the virus is and what the spread looks like are the economic and the financial impacts. And so factories staying closed longer, businesses erring on the side of caution. We're really trying to tie this back to what does it mean for the outlook for growth? What does it mean for the outlook for corporate profits, which with the fourth quarter earnings season behind us are clearly under a bit of pressure at the current juncture?
Yeah, well, Mark, a lot of people have been trying to gauge, of course, the impact from the shutdown in the Chinese economy, such an important cog in the overall world economy. But a lot of experts now believe it's not about containment, it's about mitigation, and it will get to this country and impact economic activity here. Do you agree, and do you have any ability to sort of forecast what that would mean?
No, David, of course I don't know. Obviously the probability that the virus will jump and become a pandemic that will come into the United States is much higher than it was, let's say, a week ago because of recent events in Italy and Korea and other parts of the world. So I think that's what the market did yesterday, was to attach a higher probability to that pandemic scenario. And of course, if it is a pandemic, if it does show up in Europe and the United States, then that is the prescription for a global and U.S. recession. I mean, the global economy was already very, very weak before this because of the trade war that we were engaged in last year. The European economy was just teetering on the edge of recession. And even the U.S. economy, we were okay, but, we were back down to 2% growth. So we were already pretty vulnerable, and thus the risks. And if it does jump to a pandemic, I just don't see how we avoid a recession.
Yeah, David, as you point out, the hope certainly is that the vast majority of people who actually contract the virus will recover.
Right.
That said, the fear of it, if and when it gets here in a real way to this country, perhaps will prevent people from congregating in certain ways. I mean, is there a way to measure? Is there anything that we've seen previously that really gives us a sense as to what it would mean?
So I'm not sure we have necessarily a good historical precedent, but what I think is most interesting, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? The sentiment impact and the unwillingness of people to congregate in large areas, go out, shop, eat, so on and so forth. That's really the risk. And when we got the flash PMIs last week, which are really kind of the only data we've received since the outbreak of the virus, when we looked at the service side of the equation, which is what had been holding up the broader global economy for the better part of the last 18 months, that was showing some signs of downward pressure. And so not only do we have an investment and a manufacturing part of the economy, which was just beginning to get its legs back underneath it when the virus hit, you're now seeing it spread and affect the services side of the equation, which I do think increases downside risks, not only for growth, but for markets at this juncture.
I wonder if market is making the leap that if the coronavirus spreads into a pandemic, spreads to hurt the U.S. economy, slows the U.S. economy, improves Bernie Sanders' chances of beating Donald Trump, if that's having an impact?
You know, I think that what's most interesting is the willingness of the market to look through the whole virus. And you would think if you were looking through kind of first, second quarter, well, you'd land square on the election in November. I think the reality of the situation is that regardless of who ends up in the White House this fall, it looks like those fiscal taps are going to stay open. And so I think the market may be looking at the glass as being half full of, you know, assuming this doesn't wipe out the global population, the virus will come and go. Oh, and when we look at November and the following 4 years, it looks like we're in store for more fiscal stimulus. You know, to me, that's an awfully rosy narrative to be pricing in at this juncture, but that's kind of how I interpret what the market's been doing.
Sarah, can I make a point about the election and the virus? If the virus comes here, that's an act of God, and I don't think anyone gets blamed for that. But I think what would have political implications is if the virus comes here and the response, the policy response, is botched. That would have serious policy and political implications. I mean, remember back to Katrina. Katrina hit New Orleans. That was an act of God. But what we did to the folks in New Orleans after that was not. That was botched policy, and that severely hurt President Bush's reelection chances at the time. So what will matter here, I think, most in terms of the mind of the electorate is, what does the president and this administration do, and how well do they respond to this?
Although, Mark, I just saw a tweet from Nabe a moment ago citing you on stage saying that Trump is the likely winner and that the economy will drive outcomes, and that Charlie Cook, famed pollster, said with this economy, Trump should have higher approval numbers.
Well, you're keeping tabs on me, Carl? So, okay. Okay, all right. Okay, let me explain. So if the economy is performing as well on Election Day as it is today, if the president's approval rating is the same on Election Day as it is today, and if turnout is typical, meaning average turnout for the D's and the R's that we've experienced in recent elections, then yes, President Trump will win this re-election. But those are a lot of big Fs. And so with the coronavirus, that's a big F with the economy. The policy response to the coronavirus, that's a big F for the president's approval rating. And of course, who is the Democratic nominee will have a lot to say about turnout. And so there's a lot of ifs there. But yeah, if you take it straight up, the president should win this.